So let me tell you something interesting that happened this week. And honestly, almost nobody noticed it, while TV panels were busy arguing about polls, elections, and campaign speeches. Something much quieter was happening inside a federal courthouse. A judge was sitting there, opening a set of documents that most Americans have never seen in their real form. Not summaries, not edited press releases. The actual unredacted files from one of the most controversial investigations in modern political history. For years, the public has only seen the heavily blacked-out versions, names covered, details erased, whole paragraphs hidden under thick black bars. Imagine trying to read a story where half the sentences are missing. That's basically what people have been dealing with. But inside that courtroom, the version without those black bars finally landed on the judge's desk, the full version, the real version, and according to people familiar with the situation. What is inside those pages is raising new questions about several powerful figures whose connections to the case have been debated for years. One of the names reportedly mentioned in the broader collection of records is Donald Trump. Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions, let's be clear about something. Just because a name appears in investigative documents doesn't automatically mean guilt. That's important to understand. But it does mean something else. It means the legal system now has access to information that the public has never fully examined. And when judges start reviewing unfiltered evidence in a case involving powerful people, the story usually doesn't stay quiet for long. To really understand why this matters, you have to look at how the justice system handles sensitive information when investigators gather millions of pages of testimony, flight records, witness statements, and financial documents. Only a small portion is ever released to the public. The rest goes through layers of legal review. Redactions are added, names disappear, context gets removed. Officials usually say those redactions are necessary. They say it protects victims, it protects witnesses, it prevents ongoing investigations from being compromised, and sometimes that explanation is completely valid. But every once in a while the system makes mistakes, and those mistakes show just how complicated the truth can become. Recently, legal officials admitted there were serious redaction problems connected to documents from the Epstein investigation. In some cases, information that should have been protected reportedly slipped through. At the same time, critics say other sections were blacked out so aggressively that the public version of the documents became almost useless. Think about that for a second. Some things that should have stayed hidden were accidentally exposed, while other things may have been hidden too much. That contradiction is exactly what's raising new questions in Washington. Some lawmakers now believe the release process might be hiding more than it's revealing. And when doubts about transparency start spreading like that, pressure builds quickly for judges to step in and review the original evidence themselves, because at the end of the day it's not press conferences or political debates that decide what matters. It's the courts inside a courtroom. The difference between redacted and unredacted evidence can be huge. Imagine trying to solve a puzzle where half the pieces are missing. That's basically what investigators, journalists, and the public have been dealing with for years when it comes to the Epstein files. The pieces that are visible suggest a huge network of wealthy and influential people who crossed paths with Epstein over decades. Some were business associates, some were social acquaintances, and some were allegedly involved in much darker activities. But because so many records were hidden behind redactions, separating rumor from reality became extremely difficult. Now that a federal judge has access to the full versions of those documents, things change a little. Judges don't care about trending hashtags. They're not influenced by TV debates or online arguments. Their job is simple, at least in theory. They examine evidence line by line. They figure out what is credible, what is speculation, and what might actually matter in a legal case. If a name shows up repeatedly in witness statements or investigative notes, the judge can't just ignore it. It becomes part of a bigger picture. Now that doesn't automatically lead to criminal charges, not even close, but it does mean something important. The legal machinery quietly starts moving behind the scenes, and that's where things start to get politically explosive. Donald Trump has repeatedly denied having any meaningful connection to Epstein beyond brief social interactions decades ago. Photos and records show they once moved in some overlapping social circles, something Trump himself acknowledged before later distancing himself from Epstein completely. Supporters argue that appearing in documents proves absolutely nothing. Especially in a case involving thousands of names gathered through decades of interviews, travel logs, and records. Critics, on the other hand, say the only way to settle the debate is simple: full transparency. That's why the role of the judge becomes so important right now. When courts review unredacted evidence, they aren't running a political investigation, they're simply deciding whether certain information has legal significance. If it does, it could lead to civil lawsuits or even new inquiries. If it doesn't, the issue quietly fades away. But right now the public doesn't know which direction things are heading because the documents being reviewed are still mostly sealed. That uncertainty is exactly why headlines about legal danger keep appearing, not because a verdict has been reached, but because the legal process itself has started moving again. And history shows that cases like this rarely explode overnight. Instead, they move slowly, almost invisibly at first. A judge reviews evidence, lawyers file motions, investigators revisit old testimony that once seemed unimportant. Weeks pass, sometimes months. Then suddenly, one small court filing appears, and the entire story shifts. Whether that moment will ever come in this situation is impossible to predict. Legal experts keep repeating the same point: having a name appear in documents is not the same as proof of wrongdoing. But the fact that unredacted files are now being reviewed inside a courtroom changes the conversation completely. It means the discussion is no longer just happening on TV or social media, it's happening where evidence actually matters, inside the legal system. And right now, somewhere in a quiet courtroom, a judge is sitting there, reading the full story, line by line.